He seems really down about it. Well, it's his own fault for quitting a good company, isn't it? Putting us in a situation where we can't even pay rent. What does he want to achieve? With all due respect, can you say that when you've been living in this house for so long, relying only on the money left by your husband without any income of your own? That's why I called you guys, wasn't it? What do you mean by that? It's like you're treating my husband as a cash cow or a freeloader. I won't deny it, but if we can't pay the rent, there's no point in staying here, right? It must be hard for you to pay $11,000 a month with your salary. Your savings will run out eventually, so why don't you leave before that happens? Wait, if we leave, what will you do about the rent here? The eldest son and his wife want to live here, so you poor folks can leave. It seems my mother-in-law intends to kick us out of the house because my husband's income has dropped. Next, it seems she plans to squeeze money out of my brother-in-law. Understood. If that's how it is, we'll leave right away. Really? I'll be relieved if you leave soon. I'm the one paying $11,000 in rent. She'll regret it if we leave. 7 seconds after leaving the house, I had already contacted a real estate agent and a moving company. Our departure from the house is now certain. Let's make sure my mother-in-law regrets this plenty. I'm Aurora. Recently, just before turning 40 and at the age of 38, I miraculously got married. My marriage was delayed because I pursued a career in IT, focusing solely on work and neglecting my love life. Despite having given up on marriage outwardly, deep down, I hoped it would happen. My husband, Julian, found himself in a similar situation, harboring the same thoughts. He's 2 years older than me and works in sales for a medical device manufacturer. Our paths, seemingly unrelated in IT and medical fields, crossed at an AI study group. At one of the group's networking events, we exchanged business cards. Medical devices? And you're in sales? Why join this AI study group? Recently, IT and AI technologies have been integrated into medical devices. Even in sales, it's necessary to keep up with this kind of cutting-edge knowledge. You're really dedicated to your studies, aren't you? Oh, I'm totally desperate here. I had absolutely no knowledge of IT or AI to begin with, and I just couldn't keep up with conversations with people who had expertise in those areas. Still, I think it's amazing that you make the effort to attend study groups like this. My husband, seemingly self-conscious about not being from the IT industry, made an awkward smile repeatedly during the conversation, even though there was no need to apologize. Having been dedicated to my work all my life, I've always liked people who are serious about their work like my husband. And for such serious people, I always find myself wanting to do something for them. Did you have any questions about today's explanation or the materials? I'll answer them to the best of my ability. Really? That would be a big help. Actually, I didn't understand this part and this part. And, although it's not related to today, I don't understand this part of this book. And then, my husband happily pulled out a book full of sticky notes from his bag and started flipping through it, pointing out the parts he didn't understand. The book he took out was not a beginner's book, but one for advanced learners. I felt even more compelled to help my studious husband. There's a lot to cover and it's complicated, so to save time, how about we talk over lunch outside? I'm sorry. It's just so rare to get a chance to ask about specialized topics in detail. I got a bit carried away. Suddenly coming back to himself, my husband awkwardly put the book back into his bag. However, once we were at lunch, it was as if a switch had been flipped, and he bombarded me with questions. In between his questions, I hurriedly ate the pasta I had wrapped around my fork whenever there was a break in his words. Even after lunch was over, his questions didn't stop. You're gonna have to get back to work soon, right? Thank you for today. Not at all. I was actually glad to explain things to someone who's seriously listening. It's much more rewarding than explaining to my junior employees who just don't get it. I'm sorry to ask, but I still have more questions. Could I ask you again sometime? My husband, with an awkward expression, took out his smartphone from his bag. Then, we started to meet occasionally on weekends, having meals while talking about work. Despite saying I had given up, deep down, I still hoped to get married. Gradually, my husband and I became interested in each other, started dating 3 months after we met, and got married a year later. I secretly relished the fact that I managed to get married just before turning 40. But my joy couldn't last forever. With marriage comes the necessity to formally meet my husband's parents. Being a first-time bride at this age, and having heard all sorts of stories about issues with mothers-in-law from friends, I was filled with nervousness and anxiety. On the day we were to greet them for the marriage, standing in front of their house, my anxiety and nervousness peaked, making me feel as if my heart would leap out of my mouth. Thinking of what lay ahead felt like stepping onto a battlefield. My husband, noticing my excited state, patted me on the shoulder. "Don't worry so much, let's go inside." He proceeded to the entrance, seemingly ignoring my nervousness and anxiety. My tension wasn't just because I was meeting my mother-in-law for the first time. Their house was a 3-story building, quite large, with a seemingly spacious garden. Located in a quiet residential area surrounded by other large houses, theirs was even more grand and imposing. My dad's no longer with us, so it seems wasteful for Mom to live in such a big house by herself. But she doesn't want to leave since she lived here with my dad. It's a rental, so I don't see why we should be so attached to it. Your father was a doctor, right? Yeah. So, Mom's living comfortably on the money he left behind. Though she acts as if the inheritance will last forever. My father-in-law